Hello everyone, I'm Jenny Hill.
And I'm Natika.
Hope you're all doing well today. Today we have ourselves an AP Calc AB FRQ problem, with the main topic being about rates. So this video will be great for reviewing derivatives and integrals. Let's get started. Part A asks us to find the average rate of change of A of t over the interval. Let's recall that average rate of change mathematically means slope. Therefore, this question is basically asking us what the linear slope is from 0 to 30. To solve for slope, we need to find the two y values at x is equal to 0 and x is equal to 30. To do so, we'll plug 0 into A of t, and that will give us 6.687 times 0.931 to the power of 0, which is equal to 6.687. Then we'll plug 30 into A of t, so we'll get A of 30 is equal to 6.687 times 0.931 to the power of 30. And because calculators are allowed for this question, we can just plug this into the calculator, and we should get 0.782927 ...
Hey, I have a question. How many decimals should we round that value to?
That's a great question. Because we'll need that value to solve for our final answer, it's best to use as many decimals as possible. I recommend storing that value into the calculator. However, if you prefer to just write out the term, then 6 to 7 decimals should be good enough.
So if you don't know how to store a value into your calculator, I have a short demonstration here. You simply press the store value, and then you press alpha, and then you see any of these green letters is the variable that you'll be storing these values into. So if I wanted to store into A, I simply press alpha A, I click enter, and now this value is stored into the variable A. If I want to retrieve it, I simply do alpha A, click enter, and now you get your value.
Now that we have 2 point values, which would be 0, 6.687 and 30, 0.782927, we could just find the slope using the change in y over change in x equation. We'll plug these numbers in, so it should be 6.687 minus 0.782927 ... all over 0 minus 30, and we should get negative 0.1968 ...
Hey, why are there two answers on the College Board rubric?
For College Board, using 3 decimal places is good enough, and you can either round to 3 decimals or just cut it off at the third one. Therefore, the final answer, as you can see from the rubric, is negative 0.196 or negative 0.197. And don't forget the units, which is pounds per day, as forgetting the units will cost you the entire point, as you can see from the rubric. The most common mistake students made on this test was forgetting units, so don't forget them. Moving on to part B, all it's asking for is the derivative of A of t when t is equal to 15. And we know that A of t is equal to 6.687 times 0.931 to the power of t. And let's recall that the derivative of a to the power of x is just a to the power of x times ln a. Therefore, the derivative of A of t would just be 6.687 times 0.931 to the power of t times ln of 0.931. And to solve for a prime of 15, we just plug 15 into t. So we should get 6.687 times 0.931 to the power of 15 times ln of 0.931. And we could just plug that to your calculator. You should get negative 0.163. And this is rounded to the third decimal. And you can see from the scoring guideline that there's 2 answers again, and that's simply because of the way they rounded, as stated previously.
Are units required for this question?
Technically, for the first part, units are not required. However, the question does say to use correct units for the second part. Therefore, I recommend writing it down anyway. So the units would be pounds per day squared. And therefore, for the interpretation part, it's just that the grass clippings decrease, and we know it's decreasing because our answer is negative, at a rate of 0.163 pounds per day when t is equal to 15 days. Common mistakes that students made on part B mainly lie within the interpretation part of the question, or they simply just wouldn't use the correct Moving on to part C, it's asking for the average amount of grass clippings in the bin over the interval.
What does that mean?
Whenever a question asks for the average value of a function over an interval, it's simply asking for the integral of the function divided by the amount of intervals. Therefore, to solve this problem, we basically take the integral of a of t and then divide the integral by 30 since there's 30 values in the integral. So to set this up, we just have 1 over 30 times the integral from 0 to 30 times 6.687 times 0.931 to the power of t dt. And we could just plug that into the calculator, and our answer comes out to be.
So I have a demonstration here on how to input the integral. First we have the 1 over 30, which I'll just put in parentheses. And then for the actual integral, you want to go to math, scroll down to number 9, hit enter, and now you have your integral. The lower bound is 0. To go to the upper bound, you just hit the upper arrow, and then you input 30 since 30 is our upper bound. To fill in the integral, it should just be 6.687 times 0.931 to the power of, and then for the variable, I'm just going to do x, so alpha x. And then for the x part, it has to be x because my exponent is x, so I'll put alpha x. And then I hit enter, and you should get a value of that.
The question asks us to find at what time the amount of grass clippings in the bin is equal to the average amount of grass clippings. Basically, it's asking us at what t value is a of t equal to the integral we just solved for. And to solve for that, we simply set 6.687 times 0.931 to the power of t equal to this value here, which is 2.752635 dot dot dot. And so we could just solve for this algebraically. You divide both sides by 6.687. And then you can just ln both sides. And then the t becomes a coefficient because of rules of log. And then that gives you this. And then you can just divide both sides by ln of 0.931. And your final answer should be 12.414 rounded to the third decimal. And as you can see from the rubric, the score guideline, they have 12.414, or you can also have 12.415 depending on how you round. Many past test takers had a lot of trouble with this question simply because they didn't understand what it was asking for, especially for the average amount of grass clippings over the interval. Therefore, when it comes to AP exams, not only is it important to understand certain calculus topics, but it's also important to know how College Board words their problems. Similarly to Part C, Part D has some difficult wording, but the question itself is really not that challenging. When the question mentions linear approximation, it's basically just asking for the tangent line when t is equal to 30. So we take the formula y is equal to mx plus b, and we plug known values into it to find the linear approximation. First, let's start with slope, which is m, and that's just equal to the derivative of a of 30, so a prime of 30. And moving on to the x portion of the formula, because we want the linear approximation at t is equal to 30, therefore this should just be equal to t minus 30. And then finally to b is just the y value of t when t is equal to 30. Therefore, b can be equal to a of 30. So now that we have our equation, which would be here, we could just plug numbers into it. So from part B, we know that the equation of a prime of t is equal to this here. And therefore, if we just substitute t with 30, we get a prime of 30 is equal to negative 0.05597 dot dot dot. And we can store this value into the calculator, and I'm going to store it as a, so I'm going to set this equal to a. And we've actually already solved for a of 30 from part A as well. So a of 30 is equal to this value here, and I'm going to store that into my calculator as b. So from that, we now have our complete equation, which is L of x is equal to a times t minus 30 plus b. And now we could just set L of x equal to 0.5. So now we could just solve for this algebraically. You subtract b from both sides, so a times t minus 30 is equal to 0.5 minus b. Divide both sides by a, and then add 30 to both sides. So that will give you this. And if you put this into your calculator, you should get a final value of t is equal to 35.054 rounded to the third decimal.
What should we do if we don't understand what the question is asking for or how to solve this problem?
Many students had difficulty starting this problem and solving for the expression of L of x. But if you look at the rubric here, a point is given just for stating that L of x is equal to 0.5, which is practically given in the question. Therefore, if you happen to get stuck on a question like this, if you just set up the problem with known values and variables, there's a high chance that you might earn a point without actually needing to solve for real numbers. Some final words for this FRQ. Based on College Board statistics, the average score on this question for BC students was 4.26 out of 9, and a lot of it was simply due to not understanding what the questions were actually asking for. Therefore, it's important to understand what calculus topics actually mean in terms of context, not just what they are mathematically.
We hope you found the video helpful and we wish you the best of luck on future exams.
Bye!